Have you ever heard of Emery's Thunder Run to raise funds for cancer? 4 months, one crazy runner, 3,076 miles. This run just ended on the East Coast in November 2020. And on our show today, we have Emery's great uncle, Peter Halper, that crazy runner. Also joining us is his wife, Robin, because as we know, behind every great man stands an even greater woman. Peter and Robin, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for accepting this call to do this interview. And could you just first start out by introducing our listeners to Emery so we can get to know a little bit more about her story, as she's described as small but fierce.
Well, Emery was my great niece. She died in December 2017 from a cancer known as neuroblastoma. The first time I met Emery, though, was at her funeral, actually. So I can't claim, a deep emotional bond with my great niece prior to her death. But I went to her funeral more in support of my sister. I hadn't even met Emery's mom or father up until that point. So to describe Emery to you, what she was like, I would be describing what other people have told me about her. You know, she was fierce. She loved lizards and sunflowers, the moon, but these are words from other people that knew her.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Because I feel like I know Emery a little more, only because when, our two youngest children got to spend a beach vacation with her. So that was really neat. They did meet Emery. She was like 1.5 at the time. And then she was diagnosed at age 2. And shortly after her diagnosis, her mom started a Facebook page and shared all the time videos and things about Emery, which I was just glued to this Facebook page, learning about her and meeting her through her own videos. So I feel like, even though I never met Emery in person too, I feel like I saw that spunky, that fierceness of her and her fight and her grit. It was just, she was an amazing little girl for sure.
Yeah. And so when did they start this race, or who came up with this idea?
Well, the run was Emery's mom, Jenna, started the foundation, Emery's Memory Foundation. I came up with the idea of the run to help them raise money for, research, the things that were important to them, and helping families that are going through cancer. That's what Emery's Memory Foundation does. They don't do research themselves, but they do directly help families that are going through what they went through. So I came up with the run. The first time I thought about the run was actually, I was running for another nonprofit called MS Run the US. And I was in the middle of that run, in the middle of the desert. And I just felt it placed on my heart, kind of like a question, but deep in my heart, Peter, how do you feel about running across the country? And I just kind of got chills, and I felt like, yeah, I think we could do that, but I didn't know who for or how that would look, or any of, the final product that everybody's seen now. But when Emery passed and I went to her funeral, that was when I describe it as like a tar ball in my heart. Like, I just could not fathom how somebody would have to do what her parents were about to do. And I couldn't take it, so I kind of classify myself as, a normal person who heard about it, felt that she would beat it, and bad things don't happen to kids type of thing, but once I was there and directly confronted with it, it hit me like this tar that I couldn't get off of me, and it was inside of me, and it felt that way to me. It's hard to describe. And I waited a few months and offered to Jenna and my sister, Emery's grandmother, what do you guys think about running across the country? I'll do the run and you guys get the money. And we do the awareness and we tell everybody about Emery and about all the kids and parents that are going through what you guys went through.
Wow. Well, that
So
just gave me the chills.
that's how that kind of, generally started.
Yeah.
And so, how many years have you done it?
Emery's Thunder Run.
Yeah.
This was the first and only year. But I say only. There is going to be another run, but it'll be designed in such a way that's going to involve more people and would enable people. I was really blessed to be able to give 4 months of my time, but not everybody is able to do that. And I would like to kind of open the door more so more people could give maybe 3 days of their time and run or walk or ride their bike or do their chair, in some way contribute giving to somebody else's life. Because I really, really hold deeply in my heart that the things that we have, our gifts that are given to us, are best used when we take that and we give it to somebody else. So my thing is running. I seem to be able to run a long distance, and I've been taught and have learned how I can use that to give to other people.
And I love actually the quote that's on the website that I'm going to read because our listeners might not see it. But when I read it, I was humbled and inspired by it. If it's okay if I share it,
Sure.
It's the quote where you share the strongest compelling desire that motivates me in running is that the hurting, those that I run for, will feel even the faintest whisper of I am seen. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I believe with all my heart that all of us were made, created, born with this innate desire to be seen. You can't put us into a closet and expect to come out healthy. We all want to be seen. And specifically, neuroblastoma and maybe some other childhood cancers are technically classified as rare, but that's all the more reason to see what's happening because, by and large, we only notice large numbers, mass things happening. And, nobody on the outside really notices 700 kids passing from neuroblastoma or being diagnosed with neuroblastoma, not 700 passing, other than, of course, the parents and the family. So, it's important that outsiders like myself, we've never suffered the loss of a child, see that. And the best way to say I see you is if you're willing to suffer for the person you're claiming to see. In some way, it doesn't have to be a run across the country, but it certainly can be. It can be a donation. It can be a card saying, hey, great job today. Beautiful dress. So many ways we can say, I see you. It just has to be from your heart. And this run most definitely was from my heart, from our heart. And it changes things, when you see somebody, when you really see what they're doing. And like I said, I haven't lost a child, so I can't claim to understand what that's like, other than, I don't let that stop me from wanting to be vulnerable with them, and we can all do that by sacrificing in some way for somebody else. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be education.
Right. And do you know more about neuroblastoma? Can you tell our listeners what more of that is?
Neuroblastoma, like the basic website definitions in 4 sentences, it's a solid mass tumor. It mostly affects children, young infants. The thing with neuroblastoma is we can get, we, not myself, but, doctors, medicine can get kids to remission, but more than half of them will relapse. I think that relapse percentage is getting better, especially with the work that Beat Childhood Cancer is doing. But the statistic used to be more than half will relapse. And once they relapse, there's no standard protocol for treating that. So, to be, I mean, I don't want to candy coat it, but it's, especially in the past, that hasn't been a good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from the website that it seems to be a very underfunded
Yes.
area. That
Very, very underfunded. I mean the number that everybody throws out is 4% goes to childhood cancer as far as federal funding, and that's to all childhood cancers. So neuroblastoma is even less than the 4%. So clearly nobody's going to solve the problem for us, for them. It takes, it takes families like Kyle's family, the executive director of Beat Childhood Cancer, Jenna, and so many others to pick up the sword and be advocates and do the hard work.
And I think that's what they say on their website. No one is going to solve this puzzle for us. But if we work together and take bold action, we can bring the thunder to childhood cancer. And I just love that I learned of you both and am able to use this platform to possibly even gain one more person to be able to give to this just unique small area of cancer that is impacting kids, and sometimes we see the St. Jude hospitals and the big, we raise a lot of money. Sometimes we have Gene Days at work, and we've contributed to even such donations, charities as that. But maybe this call, someone will hear it and it'll just pull at their heartstrings, and it'll just be one more person to add to this hopefully growing fund to help children just like Emery.
Yes, absolutely.
And I noticed that it said, is the run broken into 19 sections? Is that related to specific families in this Beat Childhood Cancer? Can you help us understand that a little bit more?
Well, the run was broken into 19 sections first, just as a reasonable distance for me per week to cover the total distance across the country. So 160, 180 miles per week was a reasonable distance for me to run. That's more than a marathon a day. And that comes up to 19 weeks. So it was broken into 19 sections. But once we had that 19, we wanted this, we never wanted, and I think we did a pretty good job of this not being about me running, but about being, the children that we're running for and the parents that we're trying to see. So every segment, every section was in memory or in honor of one or two children. So that's kind of the thought process behind the 19. No magic reason behind it.
And how did you travel? Where did you spend the night? How did that work?
Well, I lived in a camper for 4 months, a 20-foot camper. And so that camper was donated to the foundation by a dentist, and we traded, and it was a much bigger camper than what we originally, scary big. And we were concerned about crews being able to comfortably pull that. So we traded that in, downsized to a smaller camper. A truck lease was donated by a dealership in Missouri. So none of that was bought or paid for by foundation money or donation money. All the money that was donated is going to research or to the families. So anyway, long story short, I slept in a camper. That's how we got the camper. And we stayed in campgrounds that we would park the camper, disconnect the truck, and then we'd wake up early in the morning and, we'd go to where we had to go to the start point, the previous day's end point. And I would say to the crew, okay, I feel like I can start out with 3 miles, go ahead 3 miles, and they would drive ahead 3 miles, and I would run to them, take some water or eat an apple or whatever. And then I would be like, okay, go ahead 7 miles, and they would go ahead 7. And so we covered the 28 to 33 miles in a day that I ran, just like that. And then we'd go back, and I spent my time recovering. And the crews are, we had 19 families. Some people I personally knew, others were friends of friends, volunteer their vacation time to come out and basically take care of me while I run. So the foundation didn't pay their way there. The foundation didn't pay their way back. So it was a huge, huge gift that people gave just to be there to take care of me behind the scenes so the run could happen, So there was so much going on that nobody will probably ever see. And that's okay, as long as the parents know that they were seen and heard in a very big way.
I love how you said we are born to be seen.
Yeah.
I know every individual, it's the basic need, like to feel wanted, to feel needed, to feel loved.
Yes.
And as an educator, that's why I wake up every day, because I just love those kids. And if I can make that difference, it's that difference to help them to be seen, to be loved, to be wanted. You had a part, you mean something, right? So what did you do what do you tell yourself when you're at that 26th mile and you've done it 6 days in a row, and you probably, like, didn't you have blisters on your feet? Right?
I had all kinds of pains and aches, and so what do I tell myself to do it again the next day? To be honest, there's no personally, I was so tired, sore, sometimes discouraged. It's really hard to remember a quote. We all have our favorite quotes that we love, pictures that go with the quotes. If you can't remember that when you're suffering, nothing makes that pain better, and
I think
it's hard to say what
I was able to crew Peter for 3 of the 4 of the 19 segments, and our friends crewed him, and all of us collectively, as we shared, watching him suffer was the hardest part, I think, of crewing and not being able to do anything about it. And yet it was necessary. That's what speaks to the parents, and they may not fully understand how much it's, how hard it was, but he did it day after day after day.
I think the thing that, as I think about it and remember, is I firmly 100% know that because of all the sacrifice, not just me running, but the even bigger sacrifice of everybody that made it possible, that nobody's ever going to see and say thank you to on a large scale. Because of that, and because of the money that was raised, I have zero doubt that we have changed the story of at least one child. And probably based on the money, 5 to 7, but just focusing on one, even one unborn yet, there is nobody knows the amount that it's going to, what is that amount that it's going to take where somebody says we've cured it. We know how to treat all childhood cancers, including neuroblastoma, but there is an amount, and we pushed that a little bit closer to there. And that's not the significant thing. The significant thing is that time interval kind of that opens up for a child that's not even born yet. The parents may not even know each other yet, but someday somebody's going to walk into an office because their child isn't feeling well. The doctor's going to say, it's neuroblastoma, it's this, don't worry, mom, we got this, we know what to do now. And we did that for at least one, if not more. So, keeping that that was kind of my thing all along with seeing the parents, and physically actually meeting some of the parents and the children. I would say more than anything, that's kind of what, just a really strong belief in the purpose and knowing that it was working, just kept me going day after day.
And Robin, you shared a little bit about, from your perspective, what that was like. Is there anything you want to add that want to tell the listeners?
I think once you really look at the world of childhood cancer, you'll never be the same again. I'm a mom of 4 myself and 2 grandchildren, and I'm a counselor, and so I care about people. and I just, before Emery, we really hadn't been touched by childhood cancer, and it was something that was not on our radar. But after this experience with the run and meeting the families, which was the highlight of this whole experience, meeting some of the families and the kids who are fighting neuroblastoma right now, it's not something you just go home and go on with your life. This will be a part of our life, I think, for the rest of our life, until we see a drastic change in the world of families facing this battle.
Yeah. Well, what I kind of love about this interview is that you started and you're at the forefront of this entire movement. And as you were talking, I was just thinking, it's going to be years down the road and someone's going to find this interview and be like, that's the guy who started it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's one thing to be in your shoes and having started it and having that perspective. And I just went like 10 years into the future, and the 10 years of Emery's run, Thunder Run, that have occurred, and the people who've done it. And I don't know, my heart was just filling up with just such excitement that you in that desert, in that moment, had this idea, which is just so beautiful, because how many times have we thought an idea and we thought it, but we went on and we did something totally not related to that idea.
Yeah. Or your wife tells you,
no
your way.
Right?
You're not doing that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, my better half. But I think that's such a just sweet message for our listeners, that like listen to those still small voices, because you don't know what that could be the thought behind a movement that could impact thousands of lives, or bring, like you're doing, funding to something so underfunded that could possibly have the solution and the answer one day, because of this snowball effect or this wave that was created. So never belittle, that little thought or idea.
That gives me chills. I mean, that's probably the most important one to listen to, the quietest whisper in your heart. Sometimes I would venture to say, I have on my wall, I actually have a picture, the crew, when I ran for MS Run the US, I'm looking at it right now. They didn't know what I was thinking at that moment, but they happened to take a picture right at that moment. And they said, hey, Pete, I got this picture. And, so I know what I was just thinking, because it all happened at the same time. And where was I going with all of that?
The small little thought.
The small little thoughts. And I haven't gone back that far, other than just telling the story, but it's like, it's so cliche to say don't ever give up, but really don't.
Yeah.
Listen to that small voice, just like you said.
I'm going to show you the picture. This is him sitting looking at the sunset.
And that's like in the middle of the Mojave. Nothing around other than that. Did
you travel? Did you run main roads, or is it all back roads?
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, but 99.9% roads. I mean, if I ventured off a road, it was on a bike trail or an actual trail. There were a couple of times I tried a couple of things that weren't trails, and I quit wasting my time with those, because they usually led up to somewhere where I had no way to go. Here's the cliff. What are you going to do now? So I had to go back down, and so I stayed to trails and mostly roads.
Because you mapped it out before you started, or you kind of mapped it as you went?
I definitely mapped it out before I started. Yeah, there was a definite plan. Because, you know, we had, like I said, we had crews that are volunteering their time. So I had to be at certain spots at certain times. I couldn't say, you know, hey, come to Colorado. When I get there, you know, wait for me and then you can take care of me for a week while I run. You know, it's so it was definitely mapped, definitely planned, definitely organized.
And I've heard of people preparing for a marathon, but how do you prepare for 4 months? You were telling me you would run 6 days, more than a marathon a day, and then take the seventh day off.
Yes, that was my life for 4 months. You, you know, when I first started running, how do you prepare for it? When I first started running, I hated running, hated it. I wouldn't even be a runner today if it wasn't for Robin, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I remember the first time I ran 3 miles, and I still remember that. Like, that was a huge accomplishment to get to 3 miles. And the question was always, what do you think about running half a marathon? What do you think about running a marathon? And then there was preparation for each of those steps, and mistakes were made. And, you know, we learned from those. We learned from people that knew more than us. We sought, you know, their insight on that. And I don't want to say good at running, but I got good at
running far.
I got good at holding pain for a long time, discomfort for a long time, occasionally pain. And it was a progression. It wasn't just, you know, it was listening to that little voice many times, not just the one time in the desert. It was the many times before that. Like I said, what do you think about running half a marathon? And I was scared all the time. Doubt, I'm my worst. I have been my worst critic all the time. Nobody ever said to me, Peter, you can't do this. You're crazy. Don't do it. You're not going to be able to do it. Nobody ever said that to me.
I think an important lesson that we learned along the way is we failed way more than we succeeded in a way. I mean, we went to our second half marathon together, and we were completely out of our league. We finished 20 minutes past the last place finisher.
I mean, the tents were down.
It was, you know, so I mean, we aren't competitive runners. There was a bigger purpose, I think, in kind of piquing our interest in running 9 years ago.
Yeah.
It was, in my mind, it was in preparation for him to do what he just did.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But there was a specific training plan that I used for this. I did train. I didn't just, you know, go out there and wing it. I trained, I prepared. It was a lot of running, I actually did a lot of running right behind our mouse on a 2-mile path back. Like, I would do whole marathons on a 2-mile path just to train my mind to deal with monotony, which, you know, a lot of running can be.
Yeah. And the run starts in California and ends in New Jersey?
Delaware. It was going to end in New Jersey. The website probably says New Jersey, and it was never changed. Yes.
And I know you ran in the rain, you ran in the desert, was there any other big weather events that you ran through?
No.
So unprecedented heat in the desert, not just the heat, but they had their first record-breaking heat wave of, I think, 3 this summer when I was there. So that was the first. The forest fires. Our route was the epicenter for the Grizzly Creek forest fire. So I obviously did not run through the forest fire, but that added a lot of logistical rehashing and rerouting and a challenge. There is snow, rain. What else?
And the terrain, right? It went up, down. Was there like mountain-ish?
Mhm.
Oh, sure. The highest mountain I went over was 11,000 feet. I went over many, 3 mountain ranges, the Sierras, one desert, the Mojave, the Rockies, the Appalachians, plus the plains. So that as far as terrain, the total elevation gain, it was 3.5 Mount Everest. But that's over 4 months. People that climb Mount Everest do that in way quicker than 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine was much more, so I don't want people to think, wow, he did 3 Mount Everest. No, I didn't. But the total was a lot of elevation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what was the first thing you did when you got home?
I
Held
laid
your
on,
grandson.
I held my grandson actually. My second grandson was born while I was on the run. And I knew I was going to see him, but I didn't realize that they made the trip up to here to be here when I got home. And so he was here, my daughter and son-in-law were here, and my other grandson were all here. And so that was the first,
Mhm.
Within 5 minutes of being home, I got to hold him.
I
Hung
love
out with the
that.
family that day and laid in our big king size bed, which was nice.
Did you sleep for like a week?
No, I didn't. I mean, I was at the second day, I kind of struggled with making simple little decisions like
Mhm.
unpacking. There might have been a little bit of depression, happening. So my bags, I had 3 bags and a book bag of all my junk in it and running gear. And I still got one sitting in my living room or my bedroom, and it's been a whole week. And, normally I like things tidy and where they belong, but I just don't know what to do with it right now. So, I've taken the week off from work, and I've been off for a week, just assimilating back into their lives.
Yeah.
And what's one thing you would say to maybe a family who is struggling with a child, maybe not this specific cancer, but maybe they came across this podcast, and what's one thing you would leave a word of encouragement or just a word of hope or something you'd want to say to them?
Just hang on. Don't give up. Somebody will see you sometime, I pray, and will help. Don't give up. You'll be seen.
I'm sure
That's it.
that means a lot. That means a lot, especially when people might not hear that, right?
Right.
And sometimes I've even myself just gotten into podcast listening recently
Mm-hmm.
more, and I'll be listening to a podcast and I'll listen to a guest and I'll just totally relate with them, and I'll be like, wait, I think they're my twin. I don't even know these people.
Yes.
I don't even see a picture of them, and I've already like synced with them, and I'm
Yeah.
looking them up, and I'm like following them and
Yeah.
checking in with them. And podcasting is really unique when someone has you in their ear. It's like they're right there, and
Wow.
and I hope this podcast and listeners get a renewed hope, whether you're just casually listening and to become aware of something. If you have the opportunity to give, and you possibly take advantage of where you're going to share, the listeners can go to have the opportunity to give, or just to be comforted that there's people out there who are giving of themselves to make a difference, to help those be seen who may not feel seen.
Yes.
And that is so precious. I'm just so humbled and just privileged to have met you both and to be able to share in your story and hopefully share this story out more for others. So where could listeners go to find more about Emery's Thunder Run, or how or where they could give? Where would you point people?
Well, you could definitely go to Emery's Memory Foundation.com.
Mhm.
They will be around for quite some time doing what they do. As far as future runs, that probably would be a good place to start.
And beat childhood cancer.
beatcc.org. That is where
Our
all the research money is going.
is going to.
At this point, it's I can't say the total amount yet because it's a surprise, but it's over $100,000 that they're going to get as a result of this run. It's more than
That is
enough. I can't say how much more right now.
Wow.
So that is a great organization to go to as well. We will be in touch with them over the coming years, I'm sure. And regardless of us, if anybody's just interested in donating to either of those causes, they certainly can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again from the bottom of my heart for accepting this call for this interview. Thanks for having the opportunity to meet. And for the listeners, I'll put these links in the description below this episode. And thanks again for joining us.
You bet.
Thank you.